This is the Skoda Scala, one of the smartest small cars on the market, and in this review I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about it, including pricing specs, safety, interior stuff, and what it's like to drive, plus the best alternatives to it. So if you haven't already, please ring the bell to keep up to date with all of my reviews. It does help a lot, and let's get to it, shall we? Just like lots of other models in the Skoda range, the entry-level version has been renamed to Select. That's this one here. It is $32,490 drive away at the time I'm filming this, which is very impressive value for money for a car of this size. And it still has plenty of standard spec inclusions as well. Things like a set of LED headlights with daytime running lights. There's also 17-inch alloy wheels, keyless entry, push button start. You've got cloth seat trim on the inside with manual seat adjustment, but you've also got a decent touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is wireless, and a digital instrument cluster as well for the driver, and a fair few good safety features, but not everything that you could possibly hope for when it comes to the safety spec. I'll cover that off later on. Now, if you want to spend a little bit more, well, actually quite a bit more, you'll get into the Scala Monte Carlo, which gets you a sportier looking car with a bigger engine, more power, more torque, and it does have a bit more wow factor to it. There's no doubt about that. The exterior design is different. It gets different wheels, it gets a different interior trim as well, and a few extra features on the inside which you might like, plus some extra safety tech too. So I think if you can spend a little more, you'll be getting a really great version of the Scala, but honestly, for a lot of people, the entry-level version is all you'll probably need. But what about some alternatives that you might want to consider? If you want a very practical hatchback and you want to not pay all that much money for it, you could go and check out the Kia Cerato. It's sort of at the end of its life cycle at this point in time. There's plenty of different versions available, and I would definitely recommend that if you like a sportier drive experience, the GT version could be the one for you. You'll be paying about 40 grand drive away to get it, but it does have a very zesty 1.6 litre turbo petrol engine, lots of great features inside and out, and I reckon that the GT is the pick of the Cerato range. You can get it as a sedan or as a hatchback depending on what you want, and I do think that the Cerato size and practicality is very handy. And hey, if you are looking for something that is maybe just a little bit smaller on the outside, the Hyundai i30 has just been updated as well. It's only available in N-Line Sporty trim, and it comes with a new mild hybrid turbo petrol engine as well. So it does have a few differences to the Cerato, and it does feel pretty different on the inside. The N-Line model still has plenty of great features and inclusions, and I think it offers pretty good value for money for that size and type of car. But if you're thinking, well, I'm not so sure that I want a hatchback, I want a little SUV instead, well, maybe you should consider the Volkswagen T-Cross, which has plenty of great features for the money. It's a zesty little engine in that car as well, same engine as is in the base model Scala, and I really like the way it drives, and I really like the interior practicality as well. It's very small on the outside, but it has surprising space on the inside. Would you choose any of those or something different? Let me know in the comments. The updated Scala does bring some different design elements to the front end. I'm not sure that it's a pretty car, but it is certainly a practical vehicle. It's just under 4.4 meters in length, so not a tiny little hatchback, but certainly smaller than some of the other vehicles in the segment that you might be also considering. And it does have that sort of half wagon, half hatch look to it. I actually think that the back end design is one of the sweetest elements of this car. It's cute with a big boot at the back. It's sort of like Volvo-like in terms of that black glass element. But let's have a look in the boot and see what we are working with. There is plenty of space in the back of this car. You'll see the figure on your screen now, and that is a lot for a little hatchback like this. And it has the Skoda smarts that you would expect in the back as well. Some shopping bag hooks on the sides. They are nice and sturdy as well. There's little cargo areas on either side. You've got some cargo tie-down points here, down there as well. And on the other side, there's another little partitioned area off the side, more hooks, and underneath the boot floor you also get a space saver spare wheel, which is a nice thing to have in a car like this, and I reckon that's one of the reasons that it makes a lot of sense. But let's take a look inside, shall we, and see what it's like. Righto, so here's the interior perspective from the point of view of the driver, and I have to say it doesn't necessarily feel like it is a base model car, this one. Look at this, it's got a nice decent sized screen, it's got digital instrumentation, it's got this beautiful fabric finish across the dashboard as well, and some really great textures on top of the dash. You've got a perforated leather steering wheel, you've got nice pads on the elbows here, decent sized bottle holders in the doors, plenty of storage as well. So you've got a little storage caddy there. Sadly, it's not a wireless phone charger, and you do get USB-C ports there, so you can, I guess, plug in a standard conventional looking shifter. There's a couple of buttons down here. You've got a drive mode selector. Yep, even the base model has drive modes. You've also got your auto stop start system. You can turn that off if you don't like it, but you have to do it every time you drive the car. And you've also got parking sensor on or off button there. Couple of cup holders down there, also a key holder obviously, and a small center console bin. That is very small, but I guess that doesn't really matter all that much. You've got a decent size glove box as well, and I think that for the most part this cabin feels pretty nice, and part of that comes down to this seat trim as well. It sort of mirrors that textured finish up on the dashboard with this lovely grey inlay and the copperish looking stitching as well. It doesn't look base model to me. It actually looks pretty high spec, and it's a very comfy and adjustable seat too. Manually adjustable, as I said earlier on, but it is also a nice touch to have manual climate controls as well. I know that's a bit of a weird segue, but yes, you do have climate controls down here, dual zone climate, even on this base model, which is very impressive. And you do have to do some elements to it through the screen. If you want to change where the air is going, you have to do that through the screen. So you'll hit menu there, and then on the screen, you can adjust where the air is pointing. But thankfully you do have those controls down there, and it does make things a lot easier to adjust when you're on the run. Although, as you can see, this car's been through a few sets of hands before me, and look at those fingerprints. Yuck. I don't like fingerprint mess. Now, let's talk about the screen. Yes, you do have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it is an easy system to get used to. I love the fact that you've got dials on the side if you want to adjust things. Yes, there's a tuning dial as well as the volume dial, and the buttons on the side, they're haptic controls, but I guess you get used to them pretty easily as well. You've got AM and FM radio as well, no digital radio in this version, and you've got a couple of other menus that you might want to get your head around. Your driver assist controls, you can turn some of the things off there if you want to, but otherwise there's also this little button on the steering wheel if you want to turn off the lane keeping, for instance. You just hit that one there, and then you hit that little toggle there, and that'll turn off lane keep assist. So it's good to see that there is simplicity in terms of being able to disable some of those things if you don't like them. And I have to say, that is one of the things I like most about this car, is the controls are all very simple. You've got decent buttons on the steering wheel, and it's all very logical and thoughtful. And I guess that's Skoda in a nutshell, isn't it? You do get vanity mirrors up here, but they're not illuminated. I guess that could be a deal breaker for some vain people out there. But you get a sunglasses holder as well, and an auto dimming rear vision mirror as well. I like all those things. So it's all simply clever, dare I say it. Let's check out the backseat space, eh? I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall, and this seat is set to my driving position. And yes, this is a small car, but look how much space I've got. I've got lots of knee room, heaps of foot room as well. You've got map pockets on the seat backs with little device holders on both seats. And there's directional air vents in the back, which is fantastic to see. USB-C ports there. There is a transmission tunnel intrusion that you need to contend with if you are trying to fit 3 adults in the back, but you can do that, and you do have ISOFIX points in the window seats and 3 top tethers. I guess you can sort of see for yourself that this car is basically almost brand new, and this fabric stuff does show up a few marks pretty easily. So that might be something you want to keep in mind if you don't necessarily like having messy stuff on your seats. Maybe don't have kids, but there's also no flip down armrest, no cup holders in the back, which could be something that you need to consider for you and your family. But you do get soft elbow pads on the doors, and there's also a pretty decent set of bottle holders down there too. So all of it is pretty clever and pretty handy, and there's also plenty of headspace back here, which is one other thing that lots of other small hatchbacks that compete with this car don't offer. Actually, this is one of the most roomy backseat experiences that you can have if if you are looking for a little car. Grab handles in the back as well. You've got lights back here too, which is nice to see. All of that, thumbs up. It's a good space in the back, apart from missing a couple of amenities that you might like. It's a pretty familiar strategy for the updated version of the Scala. So the entry-level version has a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. You'll see the power and torque figures on your screen now. That is a fair amount of pulling power for a little car like this. Comes standard with a 7-speed dual clutch DSG automatic, and it's front wheel drive. And if you want a bit more grunt, the Monte Carlo does have a larger engine. It's a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol. More power, more torque, still with the 7-speed DSG, still front wheel drive, but far more smooth and refined. And if that's what you want, then I can totally understand that. But if you like a bit of gruff and grumble in your life, this one might be the better choice, because it's actually a really lovable engine. Now, in terms of towing capacity, yes, you can tow with the Scala. I'll put the numbers on your screen for the unbraked capacity for both versions, and now I'll put up the braked capacity as well. So there is a slight difference, and if you need to tow just a little bit more, you might need to go up to the top spec model. But let's go for a drive in this base car and see what it's like. If you've ever driven a 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine in any Volkswagen or Skoda, this is going to feel pretty familiar to you, because it is just like the other cars that run this powertrain. A raspy, characterful little unit, and it's a lot of fun. I actually find that I like the vibe of this car, and vibe quite literally in some instances, because it can sort of get a bit of a vibration through the body of the car. But I reckon that it is a sweet little engine, and it offers definitely ample pulling power in the majority of situations that you find yourself in if you're buying a car like this. So yes, 200 Newton meters of torque, which is a fair amount of pulling power, and it does pull pretty hard when you put your foot down as well. But like, don't go thinking that it is the sportier version. I mean, you could buy the Monte Carlo and you'll be getting a bit more for your money. And part of the reason that I do like this powertrain is that it's got the 7-speed DSG dual clutch automatic transmission, but there's something you need to know about it. So if you do come up to a standstill and you stop and the engine start-stop kicks in, and then you've got the transmission lag, the turbo lag, and the stop-start lag, at times it can be a little bit slow to react. But if you put your foot down, yeah, it's just laggy. You just need to keep that in mind. In essence, this is an urban car. So if you are going to encounter a lot of stop-start situations, I would suggest that if you're considering this car, definitely go test drive it in exactly that sort of scenario, so you can see for yourself if you can live with the powertrain stuff. I'm used to it because I've driven this sort of powertrain in multiple different iterations of Volkswagen Group products over the years, and so I know how to drive it, but it might take just a little bit of learning if you haven't driven one of these sort of cars before. But otherwise, I think that the drive experience in this Scala is beautiful. It has this really comfortable ride to it. It handles lumps and bumps in the road surface pretty well. Sure, there's still a slight firmness to it, but I think that's just a character of Skoda models more generally. And I like the way that this car handles itself over bumps and lumps in the road surface. And also it does handle pretty well more generally in corners and so forth. So it's not like a thrill machine to drive, but it does have enough prowess when it comes to flinging it into a corner and just being able to know exactly where you're going. The steering's nice and direct, and it does have a nice weight to it as well, so it's not too heavy to park at low speeds, but not too light that it leaves you wishing for a little bit more feedback or something like that. So I would say it's kind of the ideal balance between being easy to manage but also a bit of fun. And as is a pretty common criticism of a lot of this generation of Skoda products, there is a little bit of road noise intrusion that you might need to contend with, especially if you do a lot of coarse chip road driving. So if you're spending a lot of time on the major motorways or the highways around Australia, you might notice that it can be just a little bit boomy and loud on the inside of this car, with lots of road noise intrusion coming in. But I don't think that it's deafening, and I think that, well, the stereo is good enough to put up with it if you're okay with that, but you might get complaints from little ones in the back if you do have kids with you a lot of the time. But honestly, For the most part, the whole drive experience is really good. It's got great brake pedal feel and responsiveness as well. And I think that for a person who doesn't want an SUV, it could be a really compelling choice because it is a nice little hatchback to live with. On your screen now, you'll see the official combined cycle fuel consumption number for the 3-cylinder version of this car, and that is a pretty impressive figure. It's almost hybrid-like in terms of the claimed number, and so is the 1.5 litre 4-cylinder. Like, that is an impressive number, just 0.2 of a litre more for fuel consumption on paper, at least, for that higher spec engine. And if you're wondering what I've seen across my time in this car, well, I haven't been able to do necessarily exactly the same sort of testing that I usually do, but still representative of what you might do, a mix of urban, highway, and arterial roads, and some stop-start traffic as well. And I'm pretty impressed with the numbers that I've seen. So I think it could stack up very well from a lot of perspectives, this car. It's a good one, no doubt. The Scala comes with a 5-star ANCAP safety rating from 2019. It is still valid for a little while, and both models come with a decent amount of standard safety technology. If you want more though, you'll need to shop up to the Monte Carlo. So let's start off with the Select base model. It gets autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There is a form of lane keeping assistance. You get blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, a reversing camera, and there's also tyre pressure monitoring, which I think is a safety feature in its own right. Now, if you spend up to the higher grade Monte Carlo, you get extra features like advanced lane keeping assistance, as well as like a traffic jam assist feature because it has adaptive cruise control, whereas the base model car just has standard cruise control. I know it might not necessarily matter to you, but if you're the sort of person who does the long distance commute and you rely on adaptive cruise control, not having it in the base model is a bit disappointing. All right, and when it comes to airbags, you've got dual front side, and full-length curtain coverage. If you buy a Skoda in Australia, you get a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty. No other European brand in this market offers that level of cover, so that's a big tick. And hey, there's also some pretty good news when it comes to servicing. Your service intervals are every 12 months and 15,000 Ks. And if you prepay your servicing, which you can do as part of a 7-year plan, it does save you hundreds and hundreds of bucks compared to if you pay as you go. And the other great news about that care plan is if you buy it when you purchase the car, well, if you decide to sell the car after 3 or 4 years, then you can pass on the prepaid maintenance to the next owner. And when it comes to ownership stuff, you might also want to consider this. Skoda offers a guaranteed future value program. So if you decide that you want to finance through Skoda, well, you can basically ensure what price you'll be getting for the car at the end of your loan term. So there's a whole bunch of terms and conditions that you might want to read and look over. And also you can see what the weekly repayment costs might be for you and your circumstances. If you just go to the Skoda website and have a look, it's pretty simple to get your head around. I reckon it does make a bit of a difference in terms of the value equation in terms of ownership for this car as well. There's no doubt in my mind that this is one of the cleverer compact cars on the market. The price is right for this entry-level version, and it has a good amount of standard spec as well. I wish you could get adaptive cruise control on the base car, but that's probably the only main criticism that I have for this new model. But tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you choose this entry-level grade or go for the top spec, or would you choose something different? I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.